Here we go. I'll remember to press record this time.
Australians, have you ever wondered what a nickel is? Apparently it's 5 cents. So give it to Tom at patreon.com/acedetect.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, April 29th, 2015. It's my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Meg. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Ron Richards, co-host of All About Android, co-founder of iFanboy, and just all-around great guy. How's it going, Ron?
It's going well, Tom. I'm glad to be here finally.
Yeah, I'm glad that you, I mean, I don't mean to say that I'm glad that you have nothing to do, but I'm glad you finally have time in your schedule. We can make this work out. It's been too long. I've been wanting you on the show for a long time.
Exactly, yeah. No, unfortunately, I was chained to a desk that kept me in the middle of the day, but now I've got more time on my hands, so I'm happy
I know how that goes, man. I know how that goes.
Jump aboard the train DTNS.
Excellent. Well, I'm very happy to have you. We're going to talk about the Microsoft announcements, particularly regarding the ability to take Android apps and put them on Windows phones. But let us start off with the headlines. Breaking news, folks. Secret, the app that Silicon Valley insiders used to tell nasty things about each other to each other, is shutting down. It's survived by Yik Yak. That's all I got to say about that. Did you ever use Secret?
I mean, casually, you know, like as a way to just kind of peer in.
Just casual gossiper.
Yeah, exactly. Well, none of my, I mean, like it's as like any service, it's only good if people in your network use it. None of my friends used it, so I was like, it was zero.
And use it with juicy enough tidbits of gossip, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It really, really deteriorated over the past couple of months, as far as I could tell, from just seeing like they had that redesign come out, and then it was all very like city based, and it was very X-rated for.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't good. So.
All right, let's talk about Microsoft Build. Microsoft made its developers sit for the requisite 3 hours that somehow has become standard for developers to have to sit through during keynotes these days. It can't be healthy. They should at least stand once an hour, if my watch is right. In any case, Ron, I'm going to give you the one-line summaries, and you react. Ready?
All right, let's do it.
In Windows 10, Microsoft developers will be able to reuse code from the web, which they actually mentioned at Mobile World Congress, old desktop apps built in Win32 and .NET, Android apps built in Java and C++, and even iOS apps built in Objective-C. We're going to talk more about this later, but what is your one-line response?
So crazy it might work? Maybe?
I like it. That's good. Okay, I'm saving people approximately 2 hours and 55 minutes of their lives here. Microsoft released Visual Studio Code, a free editor for Windows OS and Linux with support for Git, among other things. Final release expected this summer. Your reaction?
People seem to like it. Seems to be a good update. So positive feedback.
Moving on, Microsoft announced the availability to developers of the release candidate for the full .NET framework for Windows and a full preview for the .NET Core runtime for Linux and OS X at aka.ms/netcore. .NET coming to Linux?
I thought the days of .NET were behind us. So.
.NET still exists, says Ron? No, it's still used in the back end quite a bit, actually. Next, cross-platform integrations that allow developers to build apps that embed inside Microsoft Office. If you're like, what does that mean? Well, the example they used was an Uber ride reminder that you create in Outlook on the desktop, and then it pops up on the iPhone.
It's taking a page from Google.
Yeah, it's a little Google Now-ish, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
The new browser in Windows 10 will be called Microsoft Edge. Its logo will be a blue E. Question, Ron. Is Bono going to be pissed?
Microsoft I don't know about Bono, but maybe the other guy with the hat.
You mean Edge?
Yeah.
The new browser in Windows 10 will be called Microsoft Edge. Okay, Microsoft demonstrated the Windows 10 feature called Continuum, which they showed working on tablets last time we saw it, now working on phones. The idea is that you could plug a phone into a mouse, a keyboard, and a full-size monitor, and universal apps would adapt to the screen size and work like a desktop. They showed it working with like Excel and PowerPoint. It looked pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and that's just going the general responsive approach to applications in the web, and doesn't matter what kind of interface or what kind of display port you're looking at through it, it adapts to what you're looking at, and is great. So it's cool. This was actually I'm really excited about.
I'm excited about that one too. I'm also skeptical, but I'm really excited. I want it to work as well as it looks like in the demos.
Well, it's like that little dongle that Google just put out that you plug into a monitor and has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and keyboard. You know, and you just have a computer wherever you go. As long
Chrome
as you
stick or something, and
Chrome stick.
and then the Intel PC compute stick. Stick computing, man. It's the way of the future. Carrier billing is coming to all Windows 10 devices, so you can buy something in the Windows Store and put it on your phone bill. Ron, how does this make you feel?
I mean, I don't see it coming on my bill, but it's nice to have it all in one place.
I guess if you had a tablet that had a carrier and then you bought apps, then you could just have one bill to pay.
There's a couple of prerequisites here that require it to hit the sweet spot, but if you fill those prerequisites, then it's probably pretty cool.
I mean, and that's the thing. Maybe I'm the wrong person because I have a valid credit card, and not everybody does. But to me, I get, I go to the Android App Store and I buy something, and it just gets charged to my credit card. Like, I don't think about it as like, oh, I wish this bill was all in one place, because I pay my phone bill with my credit card too.
Yeah, like I kind of like a consistency of one price on my phone bill, although if I move to Google Fi, that could change based on my usage. But having other charges other than the phone services on the phone bill just seems weird. I don't know.
Yeah, but a lot of people are very excited about this, so it must be of great value for some people, for sure. And finally, HoloLens, still damned impressive. It can now help architects and anatomy teachers. They're disrupting cadavers with HoloLens. Made a real robot look even cooler with a virtual overlay. And everything that is a universal app can run in HoloLens. Is the face mask designed by Alex Kipman too cool to care if it's vaporware?
I think this is the single coolest thing coming out of Microsoft, and this is the first thing that makes me think we're living in the future.
Yeah, and I know Microsoft promises that this is going to come in the Windows 10 timeframe, which means not when Windows 10 comes out, but while Windows 10 is still valid, unless they're fooling us by, like, Windows 10 will just be continuously updated for the rest of its life. I think that means within the next couple of years, right?
Yeah, that time frame is flexible, really. No.
Yeah.
No, honestly, from this demo and from what they're doing and from what I've heard from people I know at Microsoft, it's a lot closer, I think, than we think it is. I definitely would take it out of vaporware to actually something that we will see in the near future.
And the demonstrations are always impressive. Also, Microsoft said after the announcement, after the keynote today, that it will be working with Unity technologies to bring HoloLens support to the Unity game engine. So you'll be able to play Unity-based games in it. I imagine that will not be the last game engine to get on board. So
yeah, I was surprised at the build today how very little of gaming that they mentioned in the demo. It was very heavy on every other application other than gaming.
I hadn't thought about that till you said it. Does this mean we see HoloLens on stage at E3 then?
Oh, it's about that time, right?
Yeah, that's coming up in June.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for the Microsoft Build news. The Verge reports Google has announced a new Chrome extension called Password Alert to defend against phishing attacks. The extension compares a hashed version of your Google password to any string of characters you submit through a browser. If it finds a match and you're not on a real Google login page, it will redirect you to a warning page. The code is open source and it could be adapted to other systems. Now, if you're like, wait a minute, why are they waiting until you submit and it's too late and you've given your password to the phisher? It would have to be a keylogger otherwise, which is even less secure.
Yeah. And this is the kind of thing that you install and forget and then just have it, like, why wouldn't you install this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like anything you can do to help with your security. I mean, I use LastPass, which often will alert me when I'm using a duplicate password or anything like that. It's just another layer of security with your passwords, I think, which is, and you're right, I don't want a keylogger, so at least you know when it happens so you can deal with it. So
yeah, exactly. You can change it quickly, or if you have two-factor authentication, you're probably in a good shape to go, ooh, crap, okay, if I change it now, they probably can't get into my stuff. But it's better to know that you've made a mistake immediately than to not know at all, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Instagram announced a new official account called Music. TechCrunch reports that this is the first time the company has created a dedicated account devoted to a single subject. TechCrunch also said the account will only have 6 posts per week. Maybe they meant per day, because they've posted 3 times today already. So who knows? Anyway, posts will be grouped by specific hashtags. For instance, hashtag locally sourced will cover unsigned acts. Hashtag 15-second lessons will include how-to videos. Instagram created the account because it noticed 25% of the most popular accounts on Instagram are from musicians.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I like the idea of kind of curated content around topics that I like, although if 1/4 of the most popular accounts are from musicians, will we see a food vertical soon too? Because I'm sure there are more people posting, their
Well, that's an interesting observation, right? Because by that logic, you should totally have a food channel. But how does Instagram monetize that? They can go get a record label to pay them a little bit of coin to feature somebody in the music channel. Can they get restaurants to do the same? I don't know.
I saw a sponsored post from McDonald's yesterday that was like 6 photos that you swipe left and right on that showed the artisanal burger, and I almost vomited. But yeah, I mean, maybe.
Well, and that's the thing. Those posts that are up today, I mean, the first of the 3 that I mentioned was just the introduction to the service, but there was one for Questlove and one for another artist I can't remember now. They had significantly meaty captions. This wasn't 1 or 2 lines. I mean, it was like a full-on blog post about the subject of the photograph.
Yeah, I think this is going to be more important than we realize right now. I mean, they're downplaying it by saying clearly there are people on Instagram, musicians, and we want to give them kind of a channel. But I think this is the beginning of the next phase of Instagram in terms of creating content other than just your friends.
Taking a page from Snapchat, to be honest. Yeah. Richard Allen, Vice President of Public Policy for EMEA at Facebook, that's Europe, Middle East, and Africa, wrote an opinion piece in the Financial Times warning that Europe risks strangling companies by forcing them to deal with national regulators in the Eurozone, this according to the Wall Street Journal. Allen wrote, Facebook's costs would increase and people in Europe would notice new features arriving more slowly or not at all. Facebook is facing a wave of privacy probes from various EU national governments. It argues that it believes that they do not have jurisdiction because Facebook is headquartered in Ireland and has passed previous EU audits. But this is a European-wide issue. Like harmonizing a single privacy policy is also on the agenda for the European Commission.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay the challenge of this, but I like the term Eurozone. I want to go to the Eurozone.
Well, you're thinking of it like the ESPN zone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Disney. It's like Epcot.
Yeah,
go to the Eurozone, get some schnitzels, some chocolate. Yeah, if only it were that fun.
Yep,
Certainly not that fun for Facebook. The Verge reports that Samsung is once again in sole possession of the title World's Biggest Smartphone Shipper. According to Strategy Analytics, Samsung shipped 83 million smartphones in Q1 of 2015. Now, that's still down from 89 million a year ago, but good enough to wrest first place back from a tie with Apple. This quarter, Apple sold 61 million smartphone devices. Samsung growth comes from less profitable mid- and low-range devices, which they've been trying to sell more of, which is good. They just make less money off of them. Lenovo and Motorola combined for third, now that they're one company, and they're also down from a year ago, but those numbers are hard to compare now that they're combined. And Huawei took fourth out of the vast pack of smaller smartphone makers that are starting to charge up this chart, like Xiaomi, for instance.
Yeah, and we were talking actually on All About Android last night about how Google was saying that their Nexus line was down and underperforming, and I think it's kind of interesting to see everybody kind of trending downward in this channel. And what does that tell us about either market saturation or ability to get phones to everyone who wants them, and then waiting for the next device, the kind of obsolescence rate, like I'm not going to buy a new phone when I just bought one 6 months ago, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, people jumped on me for not giving the specs on the LG G4 when we talked about it, and so I've got some emails responding to that later. But the reason is, like, at this point, phones are commodities, Yeah, the LG G4 camera is better than it was before in the G3, and it's arguably a better camera than a lot of smartphones out there, but it's not nearly as significant of a change in any of these phones. I'm not picking on LG. You want to make your money, you got to make your money at the bottom end. So a lot of people are picking on Samsung because they're not making as much money off of the phones that are propelling them back into first place, but that they need those phones to sell. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they're making money. They're making money. That's what they want. So.
Yeah. The Verge reports that an error in American Airlines iPad app delayed a dozen flights or so yesterday. One chart in the American Airlines navigational database shared its name accidentally with another chart for Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. The iPad app that American Airlines uses became unresponsive because of the duplication. Didn't know how to handle 2 files named the same thing. Problem won't be fixed until an update is pushed out on May 8th. So, until then, pilots flying to Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport will have to use paper charts, or apparently they can also use a PDF of the charts in a separate app. Back in 2012, American Airlines was the first airline to get FAA approval to use iPads in all stages of flight. That replaces, if you're wondering, 35 pounds of paper flight manuals, saves about $1.2 million in fuel a year. Some other airlines are using iPads, others are using Microsoft Surfaces, but they're all wanting to switch to tablets.
I think it's fascinating both in that they're switching to tablets and the fuel savings and the paper savings that's providing, but also just shows you how fragile it actually is. that you name one chart or you name one function reference or something like that the wrong way, and you could the ramifications could be widespread in a system like American Airlines. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and it shows the importance of bug hunting.
Yes.
And proper data sanitization and file naming and all of that. It's such a complex interaction. I often laugh at people who are like, a battery on my book never dies. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to carry, 1,000 pounds of books around to have the same amount as I have in my Kindle. But the other side of it is, there are fewer things that can disable your paper maps, even if they are 35 pounds.
Yeah.
Time now for some news from you. These come from our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Get in there and participate, whether it's submitting a story. Voting is the easiest way. Just look at the stories that other people submitted and say yes or no. I like that, upvote. I don't like that, downvote. And you can even comment on the stories and add your voice to the show that way. Star Fury Zeta sent an IT World article about how ham radio operators have begun helping to fill communication gaps in Nepal after the earthquake on Saturday. That earthquake death toll keeps mounting. It is now attributed to have killed at least 5,000 people. Ham operators in Nepal and India are working in shifts to help people try to get in touch with relatives and pass on information. Ham radio can work off solar power and low voltage batteries too, which means when the phones and the laptops' batteries have died, the ham radio keeps operating. Operators in Nepal and India are working across the world with folks in places like Turkey, Australia, New Zealand, often helping to trace relatives and friends who people can't get in touch with in any other way.
Yeah, not to downplay the tragedy in Nepal, but it's a page out of Independence Day when how we defeated the aliens. Is the low tech solutions are the ones that work in these kind of moments.
Yeah, and it's it's funny, we're talking about the paper maps and the ham radios. It's why we don't usually abandon older technologies. We just use them for different things, and ham radio's got its place, absolutely. Yep. Even if it has been around for a while. Having been around for a while means it's a more proven technology. Abituela Condolce sent us a Boing Boing post that a Forbes source says Tesla is contributing a car to be used by two researchers to demonstrate the reality and limits of remote car attacks at this year's DEF CON convention. Now, the point of this talk is to say, look, there's a lot, right there in the talk description, they're like, there's a lot of coverage of car hacks, and they're usually like, you're all going to die because of car hacks, or car hacks are not a problem at all. And they're like, the truth is somewhere in the middle, so they want to show that. It's called Remote Exploitation of an Unaltered Passenger Vehicle. It will be conducted by Charlie Miller, security engineer at Twitter, and Chris Valasek, director of vehicle security research at ioActive. Tesla hasn't commented officially on the talk, and Tesla's name isn't listed in the summary, but Forbes has it on good authority that it will be a Tesla that they're banging on there.
Patrick Norton told me once to stay far away from DEF CON, and whenever I read about DEF CON, I always get a little shiver, and I just say...
Look, Darren Kitchen goes to DEF CON and Black Hat all the time. He tells me that, those fears are also overblown, but that one should not walk in unawares. And so, again, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right?
I mean, I suppose it's probably a good talk to have, and it's good
definitely.
It's a good conversation to have to hopefully, allay any fears people have with electric cars and things like that, and get it out in the open as opposed to keeping it like a secret. So
yeah, I think this is a really good talk because, again, like they say in the description, we tend to have one extreme or another on coverage here, and it is important to know what these vulnerabilities are so that manufacturers can defend against them and make cars more secure. But it's also important to know just how likely they really are, what their limits are, how hard they would be to enact, and et cetera. So that's true of all security stories. And let's look at the headline. All right, let's talk about this reuse of web code, especially regarding Android. Now, there's a couple of different things going on here. The reuse of web code is not actually new. That was something they were saying before at Mobile World Congress. You'll be able to take your web apps and turn them into Windows Store apps very easily, which is really nice. The .NET and Win32 code stuff is very interesting, saying, hey, you can take a desktop app, and essentially, I'm oversimplifying, but they're going to virtualize a container for it so that you can have it install, update, and uninstall just as cleanly as any other Windows Store app and sell it in the Windows Store as well. But here are the interesting ones. Project Islandwood is providing an Objective-C toolchain and middleware for APIs the apps must be recompiled, but basically they showed you taking an iOS app, putting it into Visual Studio and turning it into a Windows app. So, I think it was King's Candy Crush, one of the Candy Crush spinoffs, that they showed as having already done this. They said it was fast to market to convert it. And then Project Astoria, which even more simply allows Android apps to run on Windows Mobile, which is how they're referring to Windows 10 on sub 8-inch screens now, works with any APK that only takes advantage of the APIs in Project Astoria. I'll explain that in a second. They can also add support for other Windows extensions, particularly something like Cortana could be supported. Here's the deal with those APK, API, AP acronym soup. Android's open source project is part of the API, and anybody can use that. That's Amazon uses that for their version of Android. Then there's the Google mobile services. Not all APIs there are supported outside of Google. Those are the things that Google wants you to include on Android. My guess is mostly open source project APIs are in this Project Astoria. So if you're taking advantage of Google mobile services, they're not going to work when you drag this APK over to Windows 10. But the upshot of all of this acronyms is many Android apps you'll be able to take and put in the Windows Store and sell them to people.
Which is something that had been rumored for weeks now. We've been hearing rumblings of this, and as Microsoft has kind of the new Microsoft, as I like to call it, where under Satya Nadella, where it's just like every time I see a new headline, it's like, wow, I can't believe this is actually Microsoft doing this. But for years, I kind of laughed off Windows Mobile because they were trying to do their own thing when iOS and Android were already leaps and bounds ahead of them. So to take the strategy and pull it back and say, okay, well, if we're not going to beat them, let's level the playing field and make their apps be able to work on our hardware is kind of a genius move. But whether or not it works or not is the question.
Yeah, whether it works as easily as they say. Paul Thurrott had a really interesting column up this morning before they made the announcement, just based on the rumors of Android apps being allowed to run on Windows, where he was worried that, well, if you let people run their Android apps on Windows, then they're just going to eventually switch to Android. Like, that's a bad move for Microsoft. If I read this right, what Microsoft is saying is, yeah, sure, okay, I guess you can sideload Android APKs because we will include an Android runtime later in Windows Phone, but that's not what we're trying to make easy, and we're not going to promote that, and most people aren't going to do that. What we're saying is developers, you can now take that APK and with few or no modifications, submit it to the Windows Store, and suddenly you're selling an app through the Windows Store to Windows Phone users.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I mean, I think that what they're doing is like, so I'm a big proponent of not limited releases of applications. I hate it when companies roll out an iOS app and no Android app, or just an Android app and no iOS app. And really what Microsoft is trying to do is get their foot in that pool and say, okay, great, you did an Android app, you can also release on Windows and reach this big of an audience. But the question is, what is that big of an audience? How many people, I know that they're, aiming at having, billions of people in Windows 10 within the next couple of years. Will they be able to reach that? I mean, Microsoft has a huge reach in terms of, institutional or, on the school, on the education level and in corporate level, but are people really going to sit on their Microsoft computer and then want these apps as they come in? And what's going to make a developer go through the work to either strip out all the Google mobile services and make it work perfectly on Windows or on iOS to run the recompiling and do what you need to do in order to do it? It's because there's going to be return. And we've already seen, like Amazon and their App Store, with limited return, people are staying on Android and iOS, they're staying in their own little platforms. Whether or not that audience is big enough to make it worth the developer's time remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think what Microsoft is doing here is not adding a reason to get Windows phones, but trying to take away reasons not to. So one of those reasons is, well, they don't have the apps I like. So they're saying, well, look, we're going to make it so that developers are motivated to want to put their apps in Windows Store. And the genius of this is, if I want to develop an app, right now, I usually choose to prioritize iOS or Android. I'm not going to do both at the same time most of the time. Well, I don't make apps, but people who make apps do that. They're like, we only have time to work on one platform. Well, Microsoft, I think, is kind of genius, says, hey, guess what? You can have a second platform in there really easy. Yep. You don't have to do both iOS and Android, but with almost no work on iOS and probably no work at all on Android, you can have a second platform. And that's attractive to developers to be able to say, hey, we're out on 2 platforms at launch.
And now Microsoft will use their vast resources to get key developers and key companies to come on board and do this, to show that it is doable and to show that it is viable. And then the smaller kind of upstart developers will see that. They need to prove that that audience is there, that it will make their time. And in order to do that, they need to get those frontline apps that people say, well, I don't want a Windows phone because it doesn't have the apps I want. Now they do, and so it takes away that answer. That said, I mean, I remember when that Windows phone, that Nokia phone with the color, with the I forget the model, but had a really great camera. It was just a really great phone. I was like, oh, too bad it's running Windows. And having that hardware and being able to get the apps I want, I'd take a look at that device.
I was going to say, like, I don't think this is targeted at you, a devout Android user, but you're saying, like, it actually does make it more of a potential choice for you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely opens up the market of what your options are. Like I don't want an Nexus 6. I don't want a 6-inch phone. But if I see a really nice 5.5-inch phone running Windows Mobile that can run every Android app I want, I would consider it.
And I think it fits right into what I'm starting to understand is Satya Nadella's whole thing. But it seems that what they're doing is saying we want people to use our stuff.
Yep.
And we really don't care about fiefdoms and whether you're an Android developer, an iOS developer, an Android user, an iOS user. Because even if, and this is what I was talking to Scott Johnson about this today before we heard that this announcement was official, even if I switch back to Android, if you got me to start using SkyDrive, or OneDrive, if you got me to start using Excel again, and Office apps, and Outlook as my email manager, I can do all of those on Android still.
Yeah, and I've heard great things about OneNote, and that's what I mean. It's really interesting to see what Nadella's been doing, and a lot of people say it's almost the anti-Balmer Microsoft. But a lot of this stuff had to have started before Balmer was out and Nadella came in. So I don't know at what point, and we'll read the book in a couple of years when we find out the turning point in Microsoft. But this idea of the Microsoft walls being up around everything they're doing and you living in just this Microsoft world are gone, and they're opening their arms to everything else that's out there and just saying, hey, we want to work with everybody, which I find immensely fascinating. I just, it's all going to come down to the execution of it. I mean, yeah. I'm on OS X on OS 10 on my home desktop. I've been for years. I'm on Android on my phone. Like, I have no desire to change these things. I was on a Windows machine a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't touched a Windows machine in ages, and I didn't know what I was doing. So it would take a lot to make somebody like me switch over, but moves like this make it more and more curious. And now I want to see Windows 10. I want to see it run. I want to see, what those developer tools are like, and how easy is it to port an app, and how do they run. It's really, Google has done a lot for the Android platform. And Microsoft has taken notice. I mean, if you notice the work with Cyanogen and Microsoft that's happening, that we don't know the extent of it behind the scenes, but they're definitely talking. And it's just, it's kind of at every turn at Microsoft, they've surprised me in the past 6 months or so. So I'm just like, today was no exception. The iOS stuff, I did not see coming at all.
Yeah, I did that. When they announced the Android stuff, I was like, "Oh, it's real, and it's really targeted at developers. It's different than I thought." The iOS thing just took everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
And the developers in the audience, by all accounts, I was reading several different live blogs while I was watching, were legitimately impressed by all this. I mean, you're able to now develop in Visual Studio on Linux, on Mac, on Windows. You're able to make your app for Android and Windows, for OS, for iOS and Windows. I mean, it's crazy. Like, this is Microsoft's trying to be everywhere you want to be, to steal a credit card slogan.
Yeah, and really, it's all they could do. I mean, at this point, that we've kind of pushed Microsoft into the same role that IBM has been in, 10 years ago, or whatever. Whereas this aging dinosaur of a company that once was on top of everything and did what it is. And so, how do they reinvent themselves? How do they reintroduce themselves into this marketplace that has moved on? And I think this strategy, I continually am surprised by, and want to see how it goes and want to see what happens. Now, I'll be really paying attention to the Android developer community to see what people are saying, and as people who try it, and people, the big question is those APIs. That's the big thing. Is that Google Mobile Services is a huge part of the Android ecosystem right now. But we have upstarts. We have CyanogenMod. We have other folks who are trying to work around it because people don't like the level that Google has taken with those mobile services of moving stuff out of the AOSP and into mobile services and leaving AOSP with just kind of the little bits that are left. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fun to watch. I would just ask that they make shorter announcements next time.
Those keynotes are brutal. I've been in the
hours.
audience at Google I/O, and it just went on
Yeah.
and on and on.
I can't really complain because I'm at home. Like, I'm not a developer or a journalist stuck in that hall. You can't go anywhere. All right. A while back, this book was mentioned on the show, and now it has become our pick of the day, thanks to Russell, who sent this in. The book is called Tubes. It outlines the history, design, and implementation of the physical infrastructure that is the Internet. It's really a great story about what the Internet really is, says Russell, as opposed to the World Wide Web. It's talking about hard, complex infrastructure. The Internet is, in a lot of cases, thought of us by its use as opposed to what it actually is. And this book explores the fascinating and complex web, no pun intended, he says, of individuals, companies, and municipal entities that have worked together to create this massive and pervasive piece of infrastructure that we depend on. Blum, the author, meets a number of pretty interesting characters along the way and brings a human dimension to the story of people who make the Internet go. Thank you, Russell, for sending that along. And in fact, I believe Jenny Josephson, our producer, has been reading this as well. Check out Tubes is the name of the book. Reminds me of Where Wizards Stay Up Late, which is a book from 5 or 7 years ago that was really good. Send your picks to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com, and you can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. All right, yesterday I complained. We talked about how Google now has added card support for multiple apps. And we were, wondering like if you get control over those apps. And I'm like, well, of course you'll get control over those apps and whether they can contribute. But I'm like, I've had problems with Google now not taking away things. Have you ever had that problem, Ron?
What do you mean by not taking away things?
So I say, I don't want the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim updates just because I live in this area. And then it still gives them to me, even though I have the setting off.
I have run into that several times, and it's funny is that there's one specific search term, a specific person who I don't actually like, and for some reason it keeps coming up. It's like, do you want more stories about this person? And I've chosen no, and then a couple weeks later I get it again, and I go,
are you sure?
And I hit the button. It's like, do you want? And it's defaulted to no because I've already hit no, but
right.
For some reason they keep giving it to you. So
well, anyway, Marlon from Trinidad is a big fan as well, and he knew you were going to be on the show, so he recorded a video. We'll link to the video in the show notes, but I think it makes sense as audio as well. So here's what he had to say. Also, I just wanted to play Marlon because.
Hi, Tom. This is Marlon, the guy from Trinidad, and I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to disable Google Now cards. So if you can see right here, I have the ESPN Quick Info app, so I can get the Quick Info card, so I can get the latest cricket news. But if I go into the menu, I hit Customize, and it's going to do that circle for a while. And on the top here, you can see Downloaded Apps. So I go to Downloaded Apps, and I have options, so I can choose not to receive any more cards from ESPN Quick Info. And if I go back, the Quick Info app, the Quick Info card will be gone. Easy and simple, and you can customize it. Also, with your issue with sports teams, if I don't want to hear about Spain anymore, since the World Cup is over, that's the Spain football team, hit no, and it's gone. So that's how easy it is. And by the way, I do love the Google Now integration with the cards, because the cards also show up on Android Wear. And since you have Ron Richards on the show today, he can tell you a lot more about it and what we Android fans are really excited about with this new updated Google Now cards. So enjoy the show. Oh, and I'm watching Daily Tech News. Bye.
Okay, Ron. So what new Android cards are you excited about?
Well, there are many, many that they added. There was like over 70 applications that they plugged in. Of course, we talked about Spotify. I'm a big Zipcar user, although they screwed up my reservation yesterday. But being able to interact with Zipcar's application via Google Now, so an app that I use on a daily basis, is one that's going to be awesome. They're just little applications that you get a specific use out of make sense with the Google Now with a little bit of information. So if it's whether it's a airline upcoming reservation or package tracking or those sort of things, those are the ones that I think are the ones that are really exciting. The ones that you have those light touches into. That you only need a little bit of information. You don't need the full application experience. That's where Google Now really becomes a powerful tool.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Got a thing from a boss in the Great White North who is a UX designer and part-time teacher at a local college who is excited about the Dropbox comments. Patrick and I thought it sounded interesting, but we weren't sure exactly what we would use it for. He says sharing files with very non-technical clients that need to comment on the work we've done will allow us to send files and have them comment in the same system we've already trained them in. That's handy. And then getting files from students. He has students create files in all kinds of formats, upload them to a Dropbox. The comment feature will make marking so much easier, as I won't have to open 6 different applications to add comments, just Dropbox. Nicely done. Got a couple of emails from people writing in response to the Steam mod discussion. Did you follow this at all, Ron?
Very little. I was busy yesterday, but I saw some of the notes from yesterday.
Yeah, so basically, Valve started a Steam mod workshop for Skyrim Thursday last week, and then people were upset with the way it was implemented, so they pulled it yesterday. Jason is writing in from hot summer-like Hachimantai City in Japan, said your discussion of the mod community reminded him of another community way back in 2005 that was bought by Yahoo, and the community started to flee in droves over the net when they tinkered with the site. Eventually, they just let it stagnate altogether. The members of the community begged and pleaded, but their words fell on deaf ears, and that place was Flickr. Now he says, I know people still use Flickr and everything, but he feels like they lost an opportunity, that it was a really vibrant place until Yahoo bought it, and now it's sort of stagnant.
Yeah, it's always rough when the status quo changes, when something comes in and the overlords are the one who make the decision and the community kind of reacts. Community management, people give it it's a tough game. People think it's easier than it actually is. So.
Well, and we were trying to ponder, like, why did the audience particular, like, it's one thing for developers to say, hey, I'm upset at 25% as the revenue sharing, but why did the community members who were just going to be getting these mods complain? Joshua said, how about this? Imagine Apple steps in, says to podcast creators, you can sell your podcasts and we'll give podcasters 25% of the proceeds. That puts the Valve story into perspective. It's both insulting to content creators and those of us paying, knowing that Apple or Valve would be taking 75% of the proceeds, with very little going to those who make the content. The part I think you guys missed is where the people paying are not okay with content creators only receiving 25% of the proceeds.
It's fair.
I mean, and yeah, you could still give away the mods for free, but I guess that's not the point. Joshua makes a really good point, is the community wants the developers, if they're going to charge, to get to keep the majority of the money.
Yeah.
Levi wrote in and would like to have some additional information about the G4. I think Levi already looked up additional information about the G4, because Levi says it's not simply a leather back on a G3. One of the big features that he's looking forward to is the much improved camera, with lots of great stuff for photography enthusiasts, including a much faster lens, f1.8, manual controls, and a RAW format option. Theoretically, the faster lens should make low light photography much better. And then Bishma from blissfully rainy Eugene, Oregon, said certainly the leatherback made all the headlines. That said, I think the most important differentiator the G4 has going for it is what didn't change from the G3, the battery. The battery in the G4 is still user swappable, unlike, I believe, all the other flagship phones announced this spring.
And that's a great point. That swappable battery is a thing that's going the way of the dodo. But after seeing photos taken with the G4 last night, Miriam Johar was on All About Android, and she had a phone on hand. And I saw some photos up on Google Now people were taking with them. It looks like it might be the best camera phone on the market right now. Those photos were stunning. So
yeah. All right.
It's definitely more than a leather back, Tom.
I gave the camera short shrift. I will admit it. I made a mistake. But hey, that leather backing. Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, Jenny Josephson just brought to my attention Wall Street Journal has sources that report a key component of the Apple Watch was found to be defective, and that's why Apple had to limit the availability of the watch. The part was involved with the Taptic engine. After mass production began in February, reliability testing revealed some Taptic engines from a company called AAC Technology Holdings of Shenzhen, China, started to break down over time. Now, these are sources familiar with the matter saying that Apple scrapped some completed watches as a result of the testing. Taptic engines produced by a second supplier, Japan's Nidec Corp, did not experience the same problem. So don't get confused. It's not that the Apple Watches that shipped that you may have bought are defective, but it would explain why we have such a small number of them available for you to purchase.
And it would explain why they were kind of tight-lipped on why the weird rollout.
And limited the in-store, didn't have any in-store, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, this was a pleasure, man. Thanks for dropping by. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was good. I'm glad that I lucked into some Android-related news in my specific area of expertise.
On Microsoft Build Day, of all things. Who would have guessed?
Yes.
Twitter.com/RonXO if you want to follow him on Twitter. Go check out all about Android. Ron does that along with Jason Howell over on the Twit Network, twit.tv/AAA. It's a fantastic show if you want to keep up on Android things. And it has a fantastic founder as well.
It really does, yep.
Co-founder, anyway.
I owe it all to Jason and Eileen.
Anything else going on you want to tell folks about?
Not really. I mean, if you go to about.me/RonXO, you can find links to my Google Plus and Instagram and all fun stuff like that. And and actually I saw Avengers Age of Ultron the other night, and I might be reappearing on a podcast that I helped found to talk about it. So stay tuned to my feed for that. So yeah.
I might fanboy out about that. So did you get to see a preview, or did you travel to Europe? How did you see this?
So I got into an advanced screening on Monday in
cool.
San Francisco, and all I got to say is I can sum up the new movie in one word: Spader.
Okay.
I'm leaving it at that. So there you
That's
go.
not a bad thing.
It's a great thing.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you to our patrons. 4,940. We are just shy of our next milestone goal, and I know we're going to get there thanks to you folks. So everybody who has helped support the show, we can't express our appreciation enough. And if you are yet to support the show and you get some value out of it and you'd like to give some value back, go to patreon.com/acedetect. $1 a month. That's all we ask. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. That's 512-593-2459. Listen to the show live on tunein.alphageekradio.com and visit our website at dailytechnewsshow.com. We'll be back tomorrow with Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Wow, that show did not go as long as I was afraid it would, considering all the Microsoft stuff. So, good stuff. Good job, Ron. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
That was
a
great.
blast. Yeah.
Hey, sorry about that dump in the dock. I just
No, it's okay. I just was like, I can't. I read headline, can't read all
reason,
things.
What happened was an interesting coverage conundrum, which was a friend of ours sent it to me, an instant message. I went and looked at it.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't remember. I couldn't quite place it in the context of evolving news about the Apple Watch.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those things where my contextual level of information about it was like not enough. And so I was basically looking for you to say, do this story. And then I would write it up.
Well, yeah, I just needed less to be able to evaluate it.
I had less, but then I had too little. Like up at the top, that's the problem with Google's side thing. Like it's little chat. There's no way to put a space between the first thing I sent you, which was like one sentence and not enough, and then the first two graphs of the story. So it was sort of just like a process thing. But we figured it out.
Yeah,
I like that. The fault in our taps.
The fault in our taps. Oh, and by the way, anybody who is like, I couldn't hear Marlon, we will normalize his audio for the produced audio version, and apologies for that. But if you do want to hear it, you can get it there. Or if you're Patreon backer has access to the treasure chest. I'll be throwing it in there as well.
Marlon's on top of it. He's on top of everything.
Marlon's great. He's
great,
an old Buzz Out Loud listener.
Oh,
actually.
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He's been in the game. I'm trying to put. There's a nice thing from Dylan about the modding controversy too that I'm putting in the post show. He called in and left it. Got a jam-packed show today, man.
Yeah, this is a good show. There's a lot going on. So, Ron, it's going to take me till tomorrow to be able to talk to you about Avengers. I'm seeing it tomorrow at 7:30, but without giving anything away, without saying anything, happier or less happier than the time you saw the last Avengers movie?
All I'm saying about the movie is Spader. That's all
fine.
I'm saying.
That's
all
fair
about
enough.
Spader.
That's all you get.
It's all you get.
I'll say this: my experience with Star Trek Into Darkness has made me so afraid, for no good reason, for Ultron. I just have weird fears about movies I loved so much. I know. Don't say anything. It's okay. I'll just express my fears, and you can smile.
I kind of understand because I remember Into Darkness wasn't the joyous wonderment that we hoped that it would be like the first movie was, but I watched it. I watched Into Darkness recently, and it's not bad. It's not horror. It's just not that
No,
first
it's
movie.
not. It's the heart went out. To me, it was like all the right things that the heart went out of because maybe some director maybe got Star Wars, maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe not. I don't know.
But Avengers is it's interesting. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's not the same. I don't feel the same. Oh my God, magic from the first movie. But I don't think you. I mean, like
you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there are some more intimate intimate activities you could relate it to that are never like the first time. But
right. All right. All right.
Like bowling?
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, like bowling. Yeah, like the first time you bowl, it's just not the same. Yeah, but but there are definitely moments that I mean I enjoyed it. I'm more on the thumbs up side than not. So but you have nothing to worry about as far as Ultron is concerned because James Spader is just amazing. So
great.
But I'm a huge Spader fan, so it doesn't matter. So
I watched. No, I mean there was a great picture. Obviously, no spoiler, this is about 80s movies, but there's a wonderful picture floating around Twitter of Robert Downey Jr. and James Spader together in and I just blanked on what the movie was.
Less Than Zero.
Thank you.
Yes.
Which I didn't see when it first came out because it was
I have the
a little
soundtrack
mature
to that
for
on
me.
LP.
Oh, Less Than Zero. Less Than Zero. The soundtrack of Less Than Zero has got the Glenn Danzig song. Oh, what is that?
Yeah.
Hang on. What is it? It's oh man, Less Than Zero is great, by the way. Yeah, You and Me, the song is called You and Me, Less Than Zero. It's written by Glenn Danzig and Rick Rubin, the producer, and the band is Glenn Danzig and the Power and the Fury Orchestra. Nice. And that song is awesome. So
I need to set up my turntable.
Yep.
I just got a new turntable, and I am waiting to set it up. I got one of those ones in the briefcase. But I only have one record, which is Gene Kelly telling bedtime stories.
Oh, you can borrow some. I got a couple thousand.
I got to go find the ones that are in the garage, which are probably baked to past the point of being able to use them, and maybe go buy the Guardians of the Galaxy one over at Barnes & Noble. So yeah.
Yeah, I read an article back on around Record Store Day that a small record store in New Jersey reported that his best-selling album of last year was the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack on LP, and he didn't understand why. He didn't understand why everyone was coming in for this. I got the sense it's like this small hole-in-the-wall kind of record store, and then for some reason all these people are coming in looking for this album.
Roger, do you have a record player still?
My dad does, but I have to get a new cartridge and head for it.
Got it.
But it was one of the It was one of the really fancy ones that came out in the early '80s, back when Pacific Stereo was still a store.
Right.
The Less Than Zero soundtrack is really, I actually kind of want it. It's got Roy Orbison, Slayer, Public Enemy, The Bangles.
It's a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
No, I like you mean for the movie, right? For
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all I remember is the Bengals song.
Yeah, Hazy Shade of Winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I remember from it.
I think that's probably why I got the album was for Hazy Shade of Winter, because I was DJing back when I was DJing dances, and you needed that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the only. Well, if you watch the video, it's just the movie. It's the movie video. So
Man, Spader's the best though. I just watched The Blacklist this morning.
I don't. You know what? I don't really like him. I tried watching that show. And it's just like, dude, you look old, and you look
he's
great.
great.
Unconvincing.
He's great. Boston Legal. Like, I mean, it just goes. I mean, Secretary. It just everything he touches is amazing. So, Stargate.
Wait, was he Stargate? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is there alright in Stargate? But no, I don't really buy him as the evil kind of.
He has a way with language. He has a cadence in the way he speaks, and you'll see it when he's. I mean, Roger, have you seen Avengers yet, or did you get into a preview, or?
No, I
Okay.
have not seen the.
When you see it in the Ultron form, and if you can separate, know that it's not Spader. He's got a way of talking that is that is just so like I could just listen to it all day.
Hey, do we have a title?
No.
There's some really good ones. We've got The Secret is Out, The Fault in Our Taps, The Window of Opportunity.
The Fault in Our what?
Taps as in taptic.
Ah, okay.
Craptic Engine.
Jeez, people just
I know.
jump it all over that.
I like The Windows of Opportunity. So Crazy It Might Work, and Instagramophone, which I like a lot. Instagramophone. And then there's some more Microsoft ones, which was ioSoft Windroid 1.0, which I think is really great. That's Todd Whitehead. That's a Todd Whitehead original right there.
Wait, say that last one again?
It's lowercase I-O, capital S soft, that's one word, and then Windroid 1.0.
Wow.
So yeah, that's an elegant compilation right there.
Where is that?
Number two, I just voted it up to a 2.
ioSoft Windroid 1.0. Wow. You got a favorite, Ron?
I like that one. That one's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that sums it up, kind of. So.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Just kidding. I had a problem getting the post-show phone message into the right freaking bit rate, because every time I don't do that, it throws off the playback in some players. So just making sure. It is my sister's birthday today, but
Matt just wrote me a joke. Would you like to hear it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a baseball joke.
Okay.
Due to recent, I'm sure it's been all over too, but he just wrote it in his mind. Due to recent unrest, the Baltimore Orioles were forced to play baseball without a single spectator in attendance, or as it's known in Tampa Bay, baseball. Oh,
well,
Flan.
there's a follow-on to that because the Orioles are playing their series with the Rays in Tampa instead of in Baltimore.
Yes.
So
You're right. You're
so
right.
the policy will be continued with a 3-game series in Tampa.
And just to clarify, the source of the humor is the baseball and the Tampa Bay Rays. But yeah,
Of course.
yeah, yeah. It's terrible why it's happening, but it's always fascinating to me to watch baseball adapt to life, because baseball's whole purpose is to make you realize. Forget life. It exists, and you're just watching baseball. It's the same
baseball
as
has
it was.
existed since before the Civil War.
Yeah. And so whenever baseball is forced to adjust rapidly to a real-life situation, to me, that's one of the most interesting things about the sport.
Yeah, like when they shut down for the week after 9/11, and like those moments in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are not too many older sports. I mean, even soccer is not. I mean, it depends on where you put the origin. Like, well, they've been kicking ball games forever, but like modern soccer developed after baseball.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I thought I thought that the game that would have no fans would be a night game because of everything that's been happening, And the fact that it was a day game, I don't really understand why they did that today. I mean, not to get
Safety.
political.
It was worried about like the number of people showing up in one place and not being able to control.
Yeah.
I think that honestly it was a crowd control issue.
Yeah.
More than a like worried about the time of day or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because you know how many times people get stabbed at a normal game of any kind, just because people get unruly in a crowd.
Oh, people, the worst.
Yeah, I know. I hate people.
But it was weird.
Except for you people watching right now.
here, and
It was
people watching
listening.
and people paying my rent.
You're different.
You guys are great.
It was so weird though watching the game. And it's like in the top of the ninth, a guy in the White Sox got a single, and I heard like people cheering, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, who's that? But it's his teammates, like
Teammates, and then the like dozen people who were looking in through the fence.
Yeah.
And that one little gap that they have at Camden Yards.
And also, what was interesting was that you could hear the other announcers in the booth next to the TV announcers because there was no noise. Like typically, the noise drowns out,
right, it
and all
would
you
drown
hear-
that out, right?
But, like, I kept on hearing other people talking, and then I realized
weird.
it was the announcers next door to them, and I was like, oh wow, because it's so quiet. Like,
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
What else is the other thing is crazy is that I can't actually see the file that I just saved. Why does the file system in OS 10 do this sometimes?
Do what?
It just you create a new file, like you save a new file, and it just doesn't show up in Finder.
Oh, because it just doesn't show it. You're not like
Yeah,
Spotlight.
it's there because I go and I open an application. Because what I like to do is right-click on the file, then choose Open in this application. But I couldn't do that because Finder wasn't showing it, even though the file was there. Oh, now it's showing it. Good job, Finder. Way to get together. Give us a game.
It's just the way they rewrote some of the stuff to make.
Yeah, it doesn't
so
automatically
Spotlight.
refresh at all times. It's kind of a pain. It knows that I don't want to see that file. I'm wrong. That's what OS 10 is telling me. I shouldn't want to see that file. I'm holding it wrong. It's just a file. I'll get over it. You guys still there?
Yeah.
So I should not regret buying my tickets to see the Avengers tomorrow night
No.
at 8 p.m.
No, it's good. I mean, it's Joss. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Joss Whedon. It's the characters, and all stuff like that. Like I have critiques of it, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you guys. I mean, Tom Rogers, you know me. I mean, like it's really specific. So it's like I all in all, walked out. I mean, there's a lot of great moments. There's a lot of really cool, fun stuff. I'm still baffled as to. Well, I don't want to give too stuff away, but there's the ongoing connection between the TV show and the movie. I'm baffled with how they handle that. Or but other than that, I mean, but it was. I strongly recommend it to everybody. It'll be fun.
So it's like saying, yeah, I went and saw this Da Vinci painting. It's not the Mona Lisa, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah. But that kind of puts it in a negative light. That's why I want to do that.
But you're also a big fan of the material, so
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like the Avengers was so good, it would be shocking if this was as good as that again.
Well, and it's funny though because how often do you hear with the second movie like, oh, this is their empire? Like everybody compares it to that Star Wars, but that's never going to happen ever again.
That's a rarity,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like
Absolutely.
usually it's the sophomore jinx.
Yep.
yeah. And it's interesting because Empire Strikes Back. I mean, the first three movies were actually originally written as one movie. It was just too long.
Right.
It had to be broken out.
If
So that's
you-
why the Empire is so great because it's part of the kind of like big turnover act. In the
That's if you believe the revisionist history, Roger. I have
Yes,
I have
yes.
theories. I have
I
theories
mean,
about the real history. of
There's
Star
also
Wars.
the fact that the ending of Empire wasn't decided until closer to
Yeah.
the time that they actually shot the movie.
Right.
The big revelation. Why I don't know why I don't want to spoil it.
Well,
I'm so trained to get spoilers
No.
that I don't want to tell you that Darth Vader.
No,
is
wait.
awesome.
I have a good use case for why you shouldn't say it. Sometimes people listen to this show with their kids, and I do remember not too many years ago, a friend of mine watched the Star Wars movies with her kid for the first time. So there's a good
But
use case.
I mean, that's not a. I mean,
That's
but
an
people
edge case.
spoil. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's
I
like
know.
saying, don't say Soylent Green is made of people.
What?
I mean, it's 30 years. I mean, I feel like this.
I know.
I mean, if they watch the prequels, they're gonna know.
I
Why is there a guy called Anakin Skywalker?
I've gone
Basically,
back. I've
Oh,
read.
go ahead.
I've read the J.P. Rinsler making of books, the making of Star Wars, making of Empire, making of Jedi,
Yeah.
and I firmly believe that Lucas had no idea what he was doing from the get-go and was just reacting. And now when they're like, oh yeah, this was always the plan, also no way at all.
Well, did you read How Star Wars Conquered the Universe?
No.
The guy from Business
I
Insider,
haven't.
whose name escapes me now suddenly. That's really good at kind of pulling all of those things together from all of those different sources, and putting them in one big long context. And after reading that book, I'm like, oh, I know exactly. I mean, I don't know exactly, but I get it. Like Lucas had an idea, and he was able to make a part of that idea, and then he got to make the second part, and his ideas had changed. So he was like, well, this has always been my idea to go in this direction. So he made that part. And so they're both true. Like he's basically saying like, yeah, I generally had an idea for Anakin Starkiller and an Empire and stuff. And then I changed some names and you always revise, but it was basically always the plan. But it's not like, oh, well, I set it down on paper and then it never changed from that moment on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, things evolve and change. So yeah.
Yeah.
I have an idea that the guy from Secret could pivot to, which is instead of, having a place where people could share their secrets anonymously, create audio, like the things people wear in their ears, musicians, to hear the right music and the right key. He should create that, but that's something that creates a 5-second delay on life so that nobody ever gives you a spoiler.
I'm sorry. You know what? Just get spoiled sometimes. It's just the way of the world. I'm turning into an old man. I know.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I firmly, I mean, like, and after reading comics and all this sort of stuff, I mean, like, years ago when they killed Captain America in the comics and it was in the news before the comic books even came out, it became, that was the moment where I'm like, listen, I'm never going to be surprised by anything. I'm never going to find out who Luke's father is in the way that we found out back then ever again, and it's less about what is the surprise and more about how does it happen. And how do they tell that story?
Well, it's funny. It's the ubiquitous access to media has caused us to become extraordinarily sensitive to spoilers. Whereas back when you couldn't see, like you had to go to the theater to see it, and it would only be there for a while, and then it was gone until maybe it came to broadcast television. People spoiled stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter as much because you're like, well, I'm never going to get to see it anyway.
I heard about Luke's father while standing in line for for the movie, and so it was like the second I already knew. It's so funny because I watched the first time with my mother, but I fell asleep at the end. Like I missed like the last.
Oh, because you were young,
right?
right?
I was a kid, and so I went again to go see it with my friends, and I remember, like, they didn't say anything, but like I heard these guys coming out of the movie theaters, like, "Would you believe that? It's Luke's father." It's like, jerk.
Well, but even more now, like Avengers, like if something crazy and some turning point moment happened in Avengers: Age of Ultron, we would have heard from it by now because it's been out in Europe for what, a week or two. Like it's no longer
totally
the simultaneous kind of thing happening. I mean, honestly, I was just thinking about it. Both The Good Wife and then recently Grey's Anatomy were able to pull one over on me, and I was surprised by what happened on those shows when Josh Charles got killed off on The Good Wife, and then most recently.
Well, what's funny about Grey's Anatomy is Eileen found out what was happening by reading about it on her phone at dinner, and then decided to watch Grey's Anatomy for the first time in forever
That's
to
how
see
they
it.
work.
So the spoiler actually worked in reverse. She would have never watched the show if it hadn't been for the spoiler.
Because the event is so momentous, right?
Yeah.
The event is so momentous that it forces you to watch the event. I found out about it from Entertainment Weekly's accidental thingamabob.
Oh, you got affected by that? Yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't matter because I hadn't watched this entire season, and I was like, oh my god, I watched and I cried. And it was a whole
So
thing.
now I've been watching every episode for the past 10 years, and and my sister, who's on the East Coast, texted me and says, hey, heads up, stay off of social media. and then call me when you finish watching Grey's Anatomy. And I was like, oh, so I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't know what. So I closed all my social media, and then I watched the show, and then reacted the same way. And I was surprised as everybody was. So I don't know.
I woke my husband up at 7:30 in the morning after the finale of The Jinx and said, "Don't look at it," because he always looks at his phone first thing in the morning. Don't look at anything. Don't do anything. Just go watch The Jinx.
Yeah.
Are you out of the post by any chance?
I am so out of the post. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.